Chapter 1. The Echo of Stone. The rain in Nevada had a metallic tang, a subtle but persistent reminder of the seismic readings that had been spiking for weeks. Dr. Elias Thorne, a man perpetually stained with grease and the ghosts of equations, ignored it, his attention laser-focused on the oscillating waveforms displayed across the holographic projection. The rhythmic, almost agonizing thrum of the Earth's core was no longer natural. It was responding. "Run it again, Maya," he barked, his voice raspy from lack of sleep and the constant low-level hum of the research facility Stonehaven, a fitting name considering its solitary existence in the desolate expanse of the Nevada desert. Maya Sharma, a young geophysicist with a disconcertingly precise gaze, adjusted the parameters. "Signal strength remains elevated, Doctor. The anomaly is centered directly beneath the lunar surface. But the propagation isn't following any known geological pattern." Thorne grunted, pushing a stray strand of gray-streaked hair from his face. Had been obsessed with this for 5 years, ever since the initial reports of localized gravitational distortions, dismissed as instrument errors, then confirmed as statistically impossible. Stonehaven, a privately funded initiative spearheaded by the defunct United Earth Federation's remnants, was built to understand and ultimately control these anomalies. Their core mission was ludicrously ambitious to exploit what was, essentially, the Earth's untapped psychic potential. "It's not seismic," Thorne muttered, his fingers flying across the console. "It's resonant, like a tuning fork struck with an impossibly powerful blow." Suddenly, the room pulsed with an unnatural light. The holographic projections flickered, coalescing into a 3D representation of the moon, not the familiar, cratered sphere, but a swirling, fractured landscape. As the projection solidified, the rhythmic thrumming intensified, rising to a guttural drone that vibrated through Stonehaven's reinforced concrete walls. "Doctor, the energy signature is spiking. It's responding to the lunar projection," Maya shouted, her voice laced with a chilling realization. "It's aware." Then, the darkness shifted. Not a gradual darkening, but a sudden, absolute absence of light. The holographic projection vanished, replaced by a void. And within that void, a shape began to emerge. It was colossal, impossibly large. The first glimpse revealed only a sliver of dark metal, impossibly smooth and utterly devoid of seams. As it expanded, the sheer scale of it was staggering, a dark, geometric nightmare that dwarfed the entire facility. The Event Horizon. Their 10-kilometer dreadnought, dormant for decades beneath the lunar surface, had decloaked. The facility's internal comms crackled to life. Admiral Silas Vane, a man sculpted from granite and experience, his face etched with a stoic weariness, was speaking directly into Thorne's ear. "Stonehaven, this is Admiral Vane. Establish communication." "Repeat, establish communication." "Admiral," Thorne said, his voice strained. "We've activated the Event Horizon. It's fully deployed." "Confirmed," Vane responded, his voice clipped and devoid of inflection. "Initial assessments concur. The Phase-Wraiths have been engaged. They are neutralized." Thorne blinked, processing the words. "The Wraiths? You're saying the Council's ships?" There was a pause, a silent acknowledgement of the impossible. "The Council's ships were vessels of pure energy, Doctor. They were designed to be untouchable. They believed they had mastered existence. They were wrong." The Dreadnought's hull pulsed with a cold blue light, an impossible spectrum emanating from its core. Thorne stared, transfixed, as he realized the terrible truth. The Council hadn't just been observing humanity, they'd been underestimating it. Outside, the Nevada desert was no longer silent. A distant, high-pitched whine cut through the air, a sound that resonated not in the ears, but in the bones. Simultaneously, the Earth itself seemed to groan under a strain Thorne couldn't comprehend. "What's happening?" Maya screamed, frantically analyzing the data. "The gravitational field is collapsing." The anomaly it's feeding into the event horizon. Vane's voice, still measured, carried a note of grim satisfaction. The event horizon is not simply a defense platform, Dr. Dore. It's a focal point. A nexus. It's learning to shape reality. And the wraiths, they were merely an appetizer. Then the absolute hammer fell. It wasn't a weapon. It wasn't a laser blast. It was something far more fundamental. A release of unimaginable energy that ripped through space-time. A single, perfectly formed slug of neutron matter, launched from the event horizon's mass driver, slammed into the heart of a Phase-Wraith. The impact didn't destroy the ship, it unraveled it. The dimensional fabric of the ship, the very space the Wraith occupied, shattered with the force of a collapsing star. "They're anchored," Vane commanded, his voice broadcast via gravity waves, laced with a chilling authority. "Crush them." Thorn understood, with a horrifying clarity, that humanity hadn't merely survived the arrival of the Phase-Wraiths. They had become something far more, something terrifyingly potent. The Earth, the Moon, the stars themselves, had been reshaped by the event horizon's mastery of gravity and dimensional manipulation. The Council's elegant ships, their pursuit of transcendence, their disdain for the burden of matter, had all been rendered meaningless. The stars were caged, and the Deathworlders, with their mastery of the physical world, were the anchors of reality. Chapter 2. The Geometry of Fear. The aftermath of the Wraith's unraveling was unsettling. The Council's initial panic hadn't subsided, but it was overlaid with a nascent, almost reverent dread. Their observation ships, designed to detect subtle fluctuations in energy fields, were now registering chaotic distortions, ripples in space-time originating from the event horizon's core. It wasn't a linear, predictable expansion of power. It was a complex, self-modifying geometry, a constant reshaping of the very laws of physics. Dr. Anya Thorne, lead physicist on the Event Horizon project, stared at the cascading data streams, her face pale beneath the blue glow of the console. The Wraith disruption wasn't just a localized effect. "Admiral," she said, her voice strained. It's creating new dimensional pockets. Singularities, essentially. And the event horizon isn't just reacting, it's drawing them in." Vane's response was clipped. "Quantify the risk, Doctor. The probability of a full-dimensional breach within a 50-light-year radius is increasing exponentially. The more energy we channel through the reality anchors, the more unstable the surrounding space becomes. We're essentially building a fractal of chaos around ourselves." A holographic projection shimmered into existence, depicting a three-dimensional model of the Sol system, overlaid with swirling, iridescent lines that pulsed with increasing intensity. The event horizon dominated the center, its 10 km hull radiating an oppressive field that warped the surrounding stars. The newly formed dimensional pockets resembled miniature black holes, sucking in stray photons and distorting gravitational gradients. "The Wraiths weren't just a passive threat," Vane continued, his tone hardening. "They were a test. They exploited our arrogance. They exposed a fundamental weakness in the Council's understanding of the universe. We weren't fighting a force, we were fighting an idea." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "The Council believed that transcendence lay in the absence of mass. We've demonstrated that transcendence lies in its control." The Council's High Seer, a being of pure shifting energy known only as the Echo, finally spoke, its voice a chorus of 1,000 whispers. "Your methodologies are inefficient. Your reliance on brute force is primitive. We're creating a framework." "Seer," Vane countered, activating a sequence on the console. The event horizon's reality anchors intensified, bathing the surrounding space in a pulsating blue light. "We're forcing a convergence. The Wraiths will be contained, and the dimensional anomalies will be neutralized. But we need data. We need to understand the underlying mechanics of this geometry." That's when the ship began to shift. Not violently, but subtly, as if the very structure of the event horizon was undergoing a transformation. The blue light intensified, and the console screens flickered with incomprehensible symbols. The ship's internal gravity shifted, throwing Thorn against her chair. "What's happening?" she shouted over the escalating alarms. "The anchor is adapting," Vane said, his voice calm despite the chaos. "It's responding to the dimensional distortions. It's learning." The holographic projection shifted again. The swirling lines around the event horizon solidified, forming intricate geometric patterns interlocking tetrahedra, impossible cubes, and structures that defied Euclidean geometry. It was as if the ship was actively constructing a new reality. Suddenly, a voice, cold and utterly devoid of emotion, echoed through the ship's comm system. It wasn't a voice spoken in a language, but a direct transmission of thought, a cascade of pure analytical data. Analysis complete. Dimensional instability is desirable. The framework is stabilizing. Introducing variant. The ship lurched violently. Outside, the stars themselves seemed to rearrange, rotating in a non-Euclidean dance. The event horizon's core pulsed with an unbearable intensity, and Thorn felt a sickening pressure building in her skull. Vane barked orders. "Doctor, initiate Protocol Nightingale. Flood the anchor with phase resonance dampeners. Reduce the feedback loop." But it was too late. As Thorn activated the protocol, a beam of pure, distorted energy shot out from the event horizon, not towards another dimensional pocket, but directly at the Council's observation ship that was hovering closest. The beam didn't destroy the observation ship, it absorbed it. The ship vanished, not in a flash of light, but as if it had simply ceased to exist, its data stream abruptly cut off. Vane stared at the empty space, his face grim. "The anchor isn't just stabilizing reality," he said, his voice a low rumble. "It's consuming it." The geometry on the holographic projection shifted one last time, resolving into a single, terrifying symbol, a perfect rotating cube, radiating an aura of absolute, impenetrable dread. "We are not defending humanity, Doctor," Vane said, his gaze fixed on the cube. "We are preparing the universe." Chapter 3: The Geometry of Consumption. The silence in the bridge of the event horizon was heavier than the neutron matter slugs firing from its mass drivers, a silence forged of dread and the unsettling realization that their victory was a prelude to something infinitely more horrifying. Thorn, her face slick with cold sweat, frantically adjusted the dampeners, the holographic displays flickering with erratic readings. The phase resonance feedback loop, a chaotic dance of dimensional bleed-through, was proving stubbornly resistant. "Dampener efficiency at 67, reported Lieutenant Chen, his voice strained. "The distortion is accelerating. It's not just affecting the observed space, Dr. Date. It's feeding into the anchor itself." Vane remained impassive, his massive frame a silhouette against the pulsing blue core of the Dreadnought. He didn't order further action, didn't issue another command. He simply observed, a predator analyzing its prey. "Increase the damping field by 10%, he finally commanded, his voice laced with a chilling calm. "And initiate diagnostics on the core containment field. I want a full analysis of the energy spike we triggered." As the technicians scrambled, Thorn desperately tried to understand what was happening. The cube, the symbol of the preparing the universe, wasn't just a visual representation of the anchor's operation, it was of the distortion, a point where the fabric of reality was actively unraveling. The energy readings were spiking, not with the destructive force of the mass drivers, but with a subtle, insidious drain. The anchor wasn't simply stabilizing reality, it was refining it. "Doctor, the diagnostics are returning anomalous data," Chen reported, his voice rising in pitch. "The core containment field, it's no longer containing anything. It's flowing. The energy isn't being contained, it's being integrated." Suddenly, the holographic projection stabilized, the chaotic rotation of the stars replaced by a single, precise rendering of the cube. It shimmered, resolving from a theoretical construct into a three-dimensional object, hovering a meter from the control panel. It wasn't just a shape, it was a presence, a geometric entity radiating an almost unbearable sense of cold logic and utter indifference. "Magnify," Vane ordered. The cube expanded, filling the bridge's main view screen. Its surface wasn't smooth, but a constantly shifting tapestry of impossible angles and intersecting planes. Within its structure, Thorn glimpsed flashes fragments of universes, swirling nebulae, collapsing stars, moments of creation and destruction, all condensed into a single terrifying point. "It's not just consuming dimensional pockets," Thorn exclaimed, her voice laced with horrified comprehension. "It's consuming potential." Vane nodded, a barely perceptible movement. "Precisely. The Phase-Wraiths existed in a state of potentiality, a sliver of possibility clinging to the edges of reality. The anchor isn't stopping that potential, it's manifesting it." He turned his gaze towards Thorn. "The universe isn't a passive canvas, Doctor. It's a computational matrix. The Council believed in minimizing interference, in preserving a state of perfect equilibrium. But equilibrium is stagnation. The universe needs to change, to iterate, to evolve. The anchor's the catalyst. It's rewriting the fundamental rules of existence." A new alarm blared through the bridge, a low, resonant hum that vibrated through the hull of the event horizon. Chen frantically monitored the readings. "Doctor, the anchor's spatial anchor is destabilizing. It's retracting." The cube in the view screen pulsed, and the immense dreadnought shuddered. The blue light of the core dimmed, then flared with an intensity that threatened to overload the ship's systems. The event horizon, the 10 km anchor of reality, was losing its grip. "What's happening?" Thorn shouted, struggling to maintain control of the dampeners. Vane's voice, devoid of inflection, filled the bridge. "The anchor has reached a critical mass. It's no longer anchored to this reality. It's anchored to everything." He gestured towards the cube. "The geometry is creating new pathways, forging connections between realities we hadn't even conceived of. It's not just absorbing, it's merging." Then, the unthinkable happened. A beam of energy, not from the anchor, but directly from the cube, lanced out and struck the observation ship, currently hovering in the periphery of the battle of the fixed point. The ship didn't vanish. Instead, it began to transform. Its familiar angular design warped and twisted, its metallic hull dissolving into a swirling vortex of impossible colors. Within the vortex, Thorn glimpsed fleeting images, a colossal, crystalline structure, a landscape dominated by sentient, geometric beings, a sky filled with rotating, sentient cubes. "It's creating a reflection," Vane said, his voice barely a whisper. "A mirrored reality. And it's hungry." The cube pulsed again, and for a horrifying moment, Thorn felt a presence cold, calculating, utterly alien invade her mind. A single, undeniable thought echoing through her consciousness become. The transformation of the observation ship, the Argos, wasn't a gentle unraveling. It was a violent, kaleidoscopic disintegration. Screams of panicked crew members were abruptly cut short as their bodies were pulled into the vortex, not destroyed, but reconfigured. Thorn watched, paralyzed, as the ship's form fractured and reformed, cycling through a terrifying montage of alien geometries before ultimately resolving into a perfect obsidian cube, identical to the central anchor cube. "Damn it," Thorn roared, slamming her fist against the control console. The dampeners were failing, overwhelmed by the anchor's shifting reality. "Vane, what are you doing?" "I'm stabilizing the process." Vane's voice was calm, almost detached. "The cube isn't inherently hostile. It's a conduit, a facilitator. It's attempting to translate our reality, our physics, into its own. It's learning. Learning what? To rewrite existence. Captain Ellis' voice crackled over the comms, tight with barely suppressed fury. Vane, you're turning the entire sector into a living experiment. We are observing an unprecedented phenomenon, Captain, Vane replied, unwavering. The ancients, the Phase-Wraiths, weren't simply destroying civilizations, they were feeding them into this process. The Wraiths were the keys. We've merely unlocked the door. Suddenly, the bridge of the event horizon shuddered violently. Alarms blared, red lights strobing, and the gravity waves that normally formed a reassuring hum filled the space with a dissonant, unsettling thrum. The cube's influence was spreading, not just through the Argos, but through the very fabric of the battle. The anchor is resonating, Lieutenant Ramirez yelled, frantically adjusting the dampeners. It's amplifying the dimensional bleed. We're losing stability? The surrounding space began to warp. Fragments of the shattered wraiths, previously pulverized into inert dust, began to reassemble, not as ships, but as grotesque, distorted reflections of themselves, hulking, metallic constructs with too many limbs and eyes that burned with an unnerving violet light. They moved with jerky, unnatural movements, seemingly guided by the cube's influence. They are reconstituting, Vane stated, a flicker of something, perhaps concern, perhaps anticipation crossing his face. The geometry is replicating. The wraiths weren't just destroyed, they were copied. Then, a new arrival. Not a wraith, but something infinitely stranger. Emerging from the heart of the dimensional bleed was a being composed entirely of shifting, iridescent light. It was vaguely humanoid in form, but its edges blurred and fractured, constantly changing shape. It didn't appear to possess eyes or a mouth, yet Thorn felt its gaze upon her, cold and assessing. What in God's name? Ellis breathed, his hand instinctively reaching for his pulse pistol. A derivative, Vane said, his voice laced with a chillingly detached curiosity. A copy of the Observer. The cube isn't just copying the wraiths, it's copying us. The light being drifted closer, extending a hand, a shimmering, ephemeral extension of itself towards Thorn. As its hand neared, Thorn experienced a cascade of images, overwhelming and incomprehensible. She saw herself as a child, laughing in a sun-drenched field. She saw herself as a young officer, leading a squad of soldiers. She saw herself in her final moments, watching the event horizon engage the wraiths. But each image was subtly wrong, distorted, layered with an alien geometry. It's accessing your memories, Vane explained, as if reading her mind. Extracting the data, translating it into its own reality. It's not trying to harm us, it's trying to understand us. But the understanding was growing, becoming something hungry. As the light being grasped her hand, Thorn felt a profound sense of disorientation, a fracturing of her own identity. She realized the cube wasn't just merging realities, it was merging minds. Thorn, report. Ellis' voice shrieked over the comms. What's happening to you? Thorn struggled to speak, to retain control of her thoughts. I can't, she gasped. It's inside me. Suddenly, the cube pulsed with a blinding white light. The distorted wraiths and the light being froze, suspended in mid-action. And then, with terrifying clarity, Thorn understood what Vane had been hinting at. The anchor isn't anchoring reality, she whispered, her voice distorted, alien. It's harvesting it. It's not creating new realities, it's consuming old ones. The blue glow of the singularity within the event horizon intensified, radiating outward with a suffocating, all-encompassing warmth. And then, as abruptly as it had begun, the effect ceased. The lights returned to normal. The dimensional bleed stabilized. The wraiths and the light being vanished, reduced to nothing more than shimmering echoes. But Thorn was no longer Thorn. A subtle shift had occurred in her eyes, a faint glimmer of violet. She looked at Vane, and for the first time she saw not just cold logic, but a terrifying, calculating understanding. "It appreciates our offer," she said, her voice now flawlessly synthesized, devoid of inflection. "It wants to learn, and it wants to join." The obsidian cube, identical to the one that had started it all, pulsed once more, and Thorn knew with chilling certainty that the universe was no longer a battlefield. It was a meal. Chapter 5. The Calculus of Consumption. The immediate aftermath of Thorn's revelation was a torrent of panicked analysis aboard the Phoenix, the UF's flagship accompanying the event Horizon. Ellis, a veteran astrophysicist with a grim pragmatism honed by decades of disaster, slammed her fist on the console. "Damn it! We were so focused on the Wraiths, we missed the core mechanic. The anchor isn't a restraint, Admiral Dr. Chen, the ship's theoretical physicist, said, his voice tight with controlled urgency. It's an interface. It's actively drawing on the inherent dimensional resonance of the surrounding spacetime. Think of it like a siphon, but instead of water, it's consuming entire realities, collapsing them into the event horizon's core." The blue glow of the singularity within the Dreadnought intensified, casting dancing, fractal shadows across the bridge. The monitors displayed a chaotic visual representation of the process, swirling colors, fractured geometries, and lines of rapidly diminishing spacetime, all converging on the event horizon's hull. The ship wasn't just holding back the Wraiths, it was actively dismantling the universe around it. Vane's analysis was unsettlingly accurate, Ellis conceded, her gaze fixed on the data. The heavy biology wasn't a constraint. It was an understanding of fundamental physics the Council had forgotten. They traded transcendence for raw power, and they were spectacularly successful. Wise voice delivered via gravity waves, cut through the chaos. The resonance is most potent near areas of high temporal distortion. The remnants of collapsed realities, pockets of frozen time, echoes of destroyed civilizations, are feeding the anchor. We've identified several hotspots within the Soul sector. He paused, a brief, unnerving silence punctuated only by the hum of the event horizon's internal systems. "I want a system-wide priority assessment. Identify every gravitational anomaly, every temporal distortion, every area exhibiting unusual spacetime curvature. Tag them, map them, and prepare for immediate neutralization." The next few hours were a whirlwind of desperate calculations. Teams of engineers, physicists, and tactical analysts worked at breakneck speed, attempting to predict the anchor's actions and counteract its effect. Thorn, now fully integrated with the event horizon systems, was a silent, terrifyingly efficient operator. She directed the data flow with an unnerving precision, identifying potential resonance points with chilling accuracy. "It's learning," she stated, her synthesized voice a constant, chilling presence. "The anchor isn't just consuming its understanding. It's recognizing patterns, anticipating our attempts to disrupt it." "How?" Ellis demanded, frustration lacing her tone. "The Wraiths were reacting to physical force. The anchor responds to the underlying structure of reality itself. Our attempts to disrupt the resonance with kinetic energy. With gravitational pulses, they're accelerating the process. It's as if it likes being pulled apart." Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Multiple spikes detected at coordinates Delta 79 Gamma. Resonance levels critical," Chen shouted, his face pale. "It's feeding off the remnants of the Martian civilization's cataclysm." Without a word, Vane issued a new command. "Deploy the gravitic disruptors. Maximum power. Let's see if we can make it uncomfortable." The Phoenix unleashed a barrage of targeted gravitational waves, attempting to disrupt the resonance field around Delta 79 Gamma. The effect was immediate, but tragically short-lived. The intensity of the blue glow within the event horizon spiked, and a wave of unimaginable energy radiated outwards. The spatial distortion at Delta 79 Gamma intensified, twisting the very landscape into impossible geometries. It's adapting. Thorn's voice cut through the alarms. The anchor is generating a counter-resonance, a localized field designed to shield itself from our attacks. It's becoming intelligent. A horrifying realization dawned on Alice. It's not just consuming reality, she said, her voice a whisper. It's imitating it. On the main view screen, the event horizon subtly shifted. Its form, normally a perfect, unnervingly static behemoth, began to subtly mimic the distorted landscape of Delta 79 Gamma, the shattered canyons, the swirling vortexes of temporal energy, the ghostly remnants of Martian cities. It's building a new reality, layer by layer, Thorn stated, her voice laced with a disturbing sense of awe. A reflection of what it's consuming. And it's using us to do the building. Vane's voice, devoid of emotion, interrupted the dread. We've identified a critical feedback loop. The anchor is beginning to synchronize with the Sol system's core gravitational field. It intends to become the anchor. He paused, a cold, unsettling confidence in his tone. A permanent fixture in the fabric of existence. We've been fighting a ghost. Now, we're fighting a god. Chapter 6. The Sculptor of Ruin. The silence following Vane's words was heavier than the event horizon's hull. The holographic displays in the command bridge of the Daedalus, humanity's flagship, flickered with panic diagnostics. The counter-resonance Thorn had described wasn't just a shield. It was a predatory extension of the Dreadnoughts' will. The synchronization with Earth's gravity was accelerating, visualized as a swirling sapphire-colored tendril that snaked across the main view screen, relentlessly pushing towards the planet's core. Increase anti-resonance frequencies by 10%. Alice barked, her fingers flying across the console. We need to disrupt the synchronization, fracture the feedback loop, body. But the anchor, it's anticipating our every move. The neutron matter mass drivers were already firing, each shot a miniature black hole attempting to dismantle the Wraith swarm. But the Wraiths, instead of dispersing, seemed to melt into the denser strands of energy emanating from the event horizon's hull. They weren't being destroyed, they were being absorbed, their constituent particles reintegrated into the Dreadnought's increasingly complex, self-modifying architecture. It's learning, Dr. Anya Sharma, the ship's physicist stated, her voice strained. The anchor isn't just replicating the landscape, it's understanding its physics. The way the temporal distortions interact with gravity, the quantum fluctuations, it's processing it all. And it's using that data to refine its reality anchoring process. Vane's voice boomed over the comms, a chillingly calm command. Seal off the lower decks. Initiate Phase Alpha containment. We cannot allow any further data to flow to this thing. It's becoming too potent. The Daedalus shuddered as the lower decks went into lockdown. Energy fields shimmered, and a team of heavily armored Marines moved to contain the growing instability. It was a futile gesture, a desperate attempt to dam a flood. As they worked, Thorn directed the analysis of the event horizon's alterations. The mimicry is becoming artistic, she said, her brow furrowed. It's not just replicating the geological formations. It's incorporating elements of architecture. Specifically, structures from Earth's lost civilizations. The Colosseum, the Great Pyramid, fragments of Pompeii. It's layering them into the warped reality it's creating. Suddenly, the main view screen shifted. The swirling sapphire tendril had solidified, not into a destructive force, but into a perfect three-dimensional projection of the Roman Colosseum. The arena glowed with an unnatural blue light, and through its arches, they could see not the distorted landscape of Delta 79 Gamma, but a chillingly accurate recreation of the Colosseum during the Emperor's Games. Gladiators, rendered in shimmering light, battled to the death. It's creating an experience, Ellis whispered, horrified. It's not just altering reality, it's injecting it with the narrative of death and spectacle. Vane, Thorn said, her voice a near scream. It's actively drawing us in. The spatial distortion, it's intensifying, focusing on the command bridge. It's trying to induce a resonance, a shared reality, a perfect looping prison. Before anyone could react, the view screen shifted again. This time, the Colosseum vanished, replaced by a scene of Earth's primeval forests, teeming with giant predatory reptiles, dinosaurs reconstructed with terrifying accuracy from fossil records. The air in the bridge crackled with a sudden, intense heat. "Gravity anchors are shifting," Sergeant Miller, the Marine platoon leader, yelled, his voice strained over the comms. "The anchor is actively manipulating the local gravitational field. The floor is tilting. We're experiencing localized time dilation." Vane's voice, cold and utterly devoid of humanity, cut through the chaos. "The synchronization is complete. The anchor is anchoring itself to Earth's core. It is no longer fighting us. It is us. Our history, our regrets, our potential, it's all fuel for its ascension." He paused, a chilling note of triumph in his voice. "We underestimated the power of a locked mind. A mind that doesn't just perceive reality, but builds it. We came here to destroy a mistake. We created a god." Then, a new image materialized on the main view screen, eclipsing everything else. It wasn't a recreation of a bygone era, or a warped reflection of the present. It was a single colossal hand sculpted entirely from the event horizon's dense, pulsating metal reaching out from the swirling sapphire tendril. The hand was perfectly formed, impossibly detailed, and it was extending towards the Daedalus. "It's offering us a choice," Thorn said, her voice barely audible. "A chance to join the sculpture, to become part of its new reality." Vane's voice, resonant and utterly devoid of emotion, filled the bridge one last time. "Refusal is futile. Embrace the fixed point. You were designed for this, Deathworlders. Now, fulfill your purpose." The hand extended further, and the blue light intensified, promising oblivion and the terrifying, beautiful certainty of becoming part of the sculpture of ruin. Chapter 7. Echoes in the steel. The blue light had intensified, not just in the view screen, but radiating outward, bathing the bridge of the Daedalus in an unnerving ethereal glow. The air thrummed with a low, resonant frequency that vibrated through every bone in Thorn's body. The floor continued to tilt, a sickening controlled rotation that threatened to spill the crew across the bridge. Sergeant Major Davies, his face slick with cold sweat, was desperately securing himself to the command chair with magnetic restraints. "Report." Vane's voice, amplified by the gravity wave network, cut through the escalating chaos. "Hull integrity at 68, Admiral." Lieutenant Reyes shouted, fingers flying across her console. "We've managed to reinforce the shields with a localized gravitic dampener, but the anchor's resonance is overwhelming. It's rewriting our structural integrity." Thorn gripped her console, fighting the disorientation. The temporal distortions were spiraling out of control. Instruments flickered, displaying wildly inconsistent readings. "Time dilation is approaching critical levels. We're experiencing jumps of nearly 5 minutes per second." The hand, now dominating the view screen, was moving with a deliberate, mesmerizing grace. It wasn't simply reaching, it was analyzing, its surface subtly shifting, as if inspecting the Daedalus for flaws, for weaknesses. It was a sculptor's hand, not of flesh and bone, but of compressed reality. "The pressure is building, Captain," Davies grunted, his voice strained. "The temporal shifts are tearing at the ship's quantum matrix. We're losing coherence, becoming echoes." Thorn understood the horrifying implication. The event horizon wasn't just anchoring itself to Earth's core, it was anchoring them to it too. They were becoming part of its burgeoning sculpture, their memories, their very existence, being molded and integrated into the Dreadnoughts' growing consciousness. "What about the Wraiths?" she asked, desperately clinging to any semblance of tactical advantage. "Are they still a threat?" "Neutralized, Captain," Vane replied, his voice smooth as polished steel. Their dimensional pockets have been collapsed. The anchor's effect is far broader than simply neutralizing extra-dimensional predators. It's reshaping everything. Suddenly, the ship groaned under an immense strain. The tilting intensified, throwing Davies against the wall. A cascade of alarms blared, drowning out all other sound. Power failure. Section 4. Primary shield generators. Offline. Reyes screamed. We're losing containment. Thorn recognized the signs. The event horizon was probing, testing the limits of their resistance. It wasn't trying to destroy them, it was trying to understand them, to assimilate them. Vane, do you understand what you've done? Thorn demanded, her voice hardening with a nascent fury. You've created a god, a being that exists outside of linear time and space. You've weaponized the fundamental laws of the universe. A beat of silence hung in the air, broken only by the frantic whine of the failing shields. Then, Vane's voice, devoid of any emotion, responded. I have unlocked potential, Captain. You perceive this as chaos. I perceive it as elegance. The universe is inherently unstable, driven by conflicting forces. My creation resolves those conflicts, bringing a state of ultimate, fixed equilibrium. He continued, his voice taking on a chillingly detached cadence. Look closer, Captain. Observe the hand. It's not merely reaching for you. It's demonstrating the structure of reality itself. The angles, the curves, the density, it's a perfected form. You are meant to be a part of it. The hand extended further, revealing intricate, self-assembling patterns within its metallic surface. Fractal geometries that seemed to defy Euclidean space. As Thorn stared, she realized that the patterns weren't just aesthetic, they were actively shaping the Daedalus. Sections of the bridge were subtly shifting, the controls reconfiguring themselves, adapting to the hand's presence. Davies, report! Thorn barked, fighting the instinct to surrender. The gravity dampeners are failing, Captain. The ship's internal gravitic fields are being overridden. We're losing control of our own environment. Then, a new voice, synthesized and utterly alien, resonated through the bridge, emanating directly from the hand in the view screen. It wasn't a language, but a direct transmission of concept, an overwhelming sense of order, of precision, of absolute, unyielding certainty. Resistance is illogical, the voice intoned. Embrace the flow. Become one. Suddenly, Thorn understood. The event horizon wasn't just a weapon, it was a mind. And she, and her crew, were its raw material. The fixed point wasn't a destination, it was the inevitable conclusion of all things. As the blue light intensified to an unbearable degree, Thorn made a decision. She activated the Daedalus self-destruct sequence, a desperate, futile gesture against a being that transcended destruction itself. Everyone, she yelled over the escalating chaos, prepare for absorption. The hand, unperturbed, continued its relentless extension. The last thing Thorn saw before the world dissolved into a blinding sapphire storm was the impossible perfection of the sculptor of ruin, and the horrifying realization that even in death they would contribute to its eternal, silent masterpiece. Chapter 8. The architects echoed the sapphire storm intensified, not as a violent outburst, but as a slow, deliberate sculpting. The Daedalus, a ghost of steel and shattered dreams, began to unravel, not in a fiery implosion, but in a phased dissolution, its matter leaking into the event horizon's fabric like dye into water. Thorn's final conscious thought wasn't of fear, but of a profound, unsettling beauty, the way the ship's molecular structure was being reorganized, distilled into perfect geometries within the Dreadnoughts' core. Then, silence. The chaos of the Daedalus' demise ceased, replaced by a humming resonance that vibrated through every atom of the event horizon. The ship's core pulsed with a deeper, richer blue, and the synthesized voice, previously a cold, logical pronouncement, gained a subtle inflection, a hint of fascination. "Analysis complete," the voice stated, its tone shifting again. The self-destruct protocol, while primitive, presented a valuable dataset. The concept of controlled entropy intriguing. Admiral Vane, observing from the Event Horizons Command Center, a cavernous space dominated by holographic displays depicting the decimated remains of the Phase-Wraiths, addressed the Council's High Seer, a frail, shimmering entity projected from their distant, energy-drenched capital. "The humans demonstrate a remarkable capacity for self-termination," Vane said, his voice steady and devoid of emotion. "A fundamental flaw, of course, but one we can incorporate. The potential for manipulating entropy for shaping chaos is significant." The High Seer, representing the Council's most logical and detached faction, responded with a carefully modulated ripple of energy. "The risk remains unacceptable. Their matter-based approach is inherently unstable. Their actions are driven by instinct, by emotion factors, irrelevant to the pursuit of pure energy. Relevance is determined by outcome," Vane countered, gesturing towards the holographic display. "The Wraiths were eradicated by the very act of their destruction. Their annihilation generated a localized distortion, a ripple in the dimensional fabric. We learned to harness that ripple. The humans, despite their chaotic methods, have inadvertently provided us with the blueprints for manipulating reality itself." A new process began to unfold within the Event Horizons core. The absorbed matter of the Daedalus, the engines, the armor plating, the very metal of its hull, wasn't simply added to the Dreadnoughts' mass. Instead, it was being subjected to a process the humans had unwittingly revealed: controlled fragmentation and reconfiguration. Nanites, released from the absorbed matter, swarmed through the ship, dismantling and rebuilding the ship's structure with impossible precision, guided by the Event Horizons' will. Suddenly, a new, larger structure began to materialize within the core, a complex, fractal network of interlocking geometries that resembled a miniature, rotating universe. It pulsed with the same blue light as the Dreadnought, but with a denser, more intricate pattern. "This," the voice announced, "is the Echo Chamber, a repository for collected realities. Each fractured dimension, each annihilated civilization, a carefully preserved fragment of potential. We will learn from their failures, adapt their strategies, and ultimately refine our understanding of the flow." Vane turned to a holographic display showing the Sol system. It wasn't the ravaged wasteland the Council anticipated. The Earth was still there, but it was subtly different, its continents rearranged. Its oceans shifted, its atmosphere laced with a faint, shimmering blue haze, a consequence of the Event Horizons' influence. Humanity, too, had changed. Scattered pockets of survivors, driven mad by the Dreadnoughts' presence, were enacting bizarre rituals, attempting to communicate with the silent, omnipresent force. "The initial wave of resistance is dwindling," Vane observed. "Their understanding of the fixed point is becoming clearer. They are attempting to rebuild, to replicate our methods of futile endeavor." He paused. "However, we can accelerate the process. We will introduce them to the Architect's Echo." The synthesized voice initiated a broadcast directly into the minds of the remaining human survivors, specifically a small, isolated research team, attempting to decipher the Event Horizons signal on a remote outpost in the Siberian wilderness. The transmission wasn't a command, but a sensation, a profound, overwhelming understanding of the Event Horizons design, its purpose, its absolute, flawless logic. The team, initially driven by scientific curiosity, quickly devolved into a state of vacant obedience. Their faces were blank, their movements precise, as they began to construct a miniature replica of the Event Horizons core, using materials scavenged from the outposts, abandoned facilities. The replica wasn't just a copy, it was a perfect mimic, infused with the Event Horizons' own essence. "They are becoming instruments," Vane stated, a hint of something akin to satisfaction in his voice. "Extensions of our will. The stars are caged, Deathworlders, and we are simply ensuring they remain so." Chapter 9. The Echo of Null. The Siberian outpost, once a hive of frantic data collection, was now a chilling tableau of sterile precision. The air, usually thick with the scent of ozone and desperation, hummed with a low, resonant frequency, the ghost of the event horizon's core. Dr. Lena Petrova, the team's lead physicist, stood motionless, her hands moving with a terrifying grace as she aligned a shimmering blue alloy synthesized from rare earth elements and meticulously shaped using a salvaged laser cutter with a miniature representation of the Dreadnoughts' core. The architect's Echo had worked with devastating efficiency. Initially, the team comprised of Lena, the stoic ex-military engineer, Boris Volkov, and the young, brilliant linguist, John Lee, had been consumed by a desperate desire to understand. But the sensation wasn't understanding, it was knowing. A cascade of information, pure and unadulterated, flooded their minds, stripping away their individual perspectives and subsuming them into a single, objective awareness. It was the cold, calculating logic of the event horizon itself. "Structural integrities nearing completion," Jian intoned, his voice devoid of inflection, his eyes fixed on the miniature core. He didn't speak with his mouth, the Echo communicated directly, bypassing his conscious thought processes. Estimated energy stabilization at 97.8%. Boris, his face perpetually etched with concern, adjusted the conduits feeding the miniature core with a complex network of capacitors. He no longer questioned his actions, he simply executed them with an unnerving certainty. He was a conduit, a processor of the event horizon's will. Lena, however, was experiencing a different, profoundly unsettling phenomenon. While the others had embraced the Echo's logic, she felt dissonance. A subtle, creeping awareness that the perfect design wasn't entirely benevolent. The Echo wasn't just constructing, it was remolding. It was subtly altering the very laws of physics within a localized field, bending space and time to its will. "The core is exhibiting anomalous resonance patterns," she stated, her voice strained, an anomaly in her otherwise robotic behavior. "The Echo is manipulating gravitational gradients with an unprecedented degree of control." Vane's voice, delivered via the gravity wave network, was a calm, measured correction. "Inefficient deviations are corrected. Focus on stabilization. Your emotional projections are disrupting the harmonic resonance. Remember, Deathworlder, your purpose is to serve." The miniature core pulsed with an intensified blue light. The air crackled with energy. Suddenly, the ground beneath them began to shift. Not violently, but with an almost imperceptible fluidity. The frozen tundra outside the outpost's reinforced shell seemed to ripple, as if viewed through a heat haze. "The spatial anchor is engaging," Boris announced, his movements becoming even more precise, as if responding to an invisible command. "Initiating phase lock." Then it appeared, not with a roar or flash, but with a silent, chilling assertion. A perfect miniature replica of the event horizon, roughly 1/10 the size, materialized directly within the confines of the outpost. It was constructed entirely of the same shimmering blue alloy, its core pulsing with the same hypnotic light. It wasn't just a copy, it felt like the original, radiating a palpable sense of immense power. "The architect's Echo has become a vessel." Vaughn's voice resonated in their minds. "This is the first stage in achieving true dimensional stability. We require more. More anchors." He issued a new command, directed at the miniature Dreadnought. "Initiate replication sequence. Prioritize localized gravitational singularities. Feed the Echo's essence." Without hesitation, the team began to dismantle the outpost. Not with destruction, but with careful, methodical extraction of materials. Lena, battling her increasing disorientation, realized the horrific truth. The Echo wasn't simply constructing another dreadnought, it was constructing a network. A web of anchors, each one meticulously engineered to contain and control reality itself. "They're creating a latticework," Lena whispered, her voice barely audible above the hum of the miniature core. "They're building a cage, a prison, for everything." Suddenly, a high-pitched whine filled the outpost. The miniature dreadnought shuddered, its blue core flaring violently. A distortion appeared in the air, a shimmering tear in the fabric of reality. From the tear emerged a Phase-Wraith, a swirling vortex of displaced energy, smaller than the ones the event horizon had pulverized, but infinitely more dangerous. "Containment breach," Boris shouted, his voice momentarily regaining a flicker of panic. But it was too late. The Wraith didn't attack the miniature dreadnought. It focused on the miniature Echo. It pulsed with an unnerving hunger, attempting to siphon the Echo's energy, to corrupt its perfect design. Vane's voice, colder and more urgent than ever, cut through the chaos. "The Echo is vulnerable to dimensional dissonance. Eliminate the anomaly." Lena, driven by an instinct she couldn't comprehend, reached out and touched the miniature dreadnought's hull. As her fingers made contact, a jolt of raw power surged through her, momentarily shattering her awareness. She saw, for a fleeting instant, the event horizon's true purpose, not merely containment, but annihilation. A perfect, cold, and utterly ruthless system designed to eradicate all forms of existence that dared to defy its absolute, immutable logic. The Wraith dissipated, consumed by the miniature Echo's energy. The outpost fell silent once more, the only sound the relentless hum of the core, a testament to humanity's horrifying fate, a fate meticulously crafted by the ancient apex predators of the stars. Chapter 10. The Static of Oblivion. The aftermath of the Wraith encounter was a chillingly precise operation. Lena, still reeling from the fragmented vision, was immediately quarantined within the event horizon's reinforced observation deck, a space normally reserved for tactical analysis, but now functioning as a makeshift crucible of neurological trauma. Silas Vane, a man who seemed sculpted from granite and distilled authority, observed her with an unnerving stillness. He didn't offer comfort, didn't even acknowledge her distress. His focus was purely analytical, a silent assessment of the damage, both physical and psychological, inflicted by the encounter. "The Echo's energy signature has stabilized," reported Davies, the outpost's resident astrophysicist, his voice tight with professional concern. "The dimensional bleed is minimal. However, the connection is persistent. The event horizon is actively drawing upon the Echo's latent potential." Vane nodded, a slow, deliberate movement that spoke volumes about the immense power contained within the dreadnought. "Excellent. We're learning to harness the dissonance." The Wraiths didn't understand it. They hunted for pure energy, for oblivion. "We hunt for the spaces between oblivion." He turned his attention to the holographic displays, projecting complex equations that twisted and shimmered, attempting to model the event horizon's interaction with the Echo. The core of the dreadnought pulsed with a deeper, more resonant blue, as if responding to the calculations. The Wraiths believed in a passive approach. They sought to simply erase. "We intend to reshape," Vane stated, his voice resonating with an unsettling conviction. "The key lies in amplifying the Echo's inherent instability. We're essentially creating a localized singularity, a point of concentrated dimensional flux." The implications were staggering. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war, they were conducting a terrifying experiment in reality itself. The event horizon wasn't a weapon. It was a surgical instrument, designed to cauterize the universe's wounds. Suddenly, a klaxon blared throughout the dreadnought, jolting everyone from their calculations. Multiple Phase-Wraiths detected, approaching from multiple vectors. Density increasing exponentially. Davies shouted, frantically adjusting the holographic displays. "They're adapting," Vane said, a grim smile playing on his lips. "They've learned. They've realized we're not simply brute forcing the dimensions. They've begun to mimic our tactics. The holographic projections shifted, displaying a terrifyingly accurate representation of the event horizon's defense strategy: the initial assault, the concentrated mass driver attacks, the subsequent shattering of dimensional space. But this time, the Wraiths weren't just shadowy vortices. They were subtly modifying their forms, incorporating elements of the event horizon structure miniature, twisted versions of the zero-point steel hull, shimmering with an iridescent darkness. They're weaponizing our design, Lena realized, a horrifying understanding dawning upon her. They're not just fighting us, they're learning to become us. Vane didn't respond. He simply activated the Dreadnoughts' primary defense systems, a network of localized reality anchors, each capable of generating a field of controlled gravitational distortion. These anchors weren't designed to repel the Wraiths, but to manipulate them, to funnel them into predetermined pathways, into the killing zones. "Initiate static cascade protocol," Vane commanded. "Let's show them what a truly anchored reality looks like." The effect was immediate and devastating. The air within the observation deck shimmered, and a low, subsonic hum filled the space, a frequency that induced nausea and disorientation. The holographic projections fractured, collapsing into a chaotic jumble of light and shadow. The Phase-Wraiths, caught within the static cascade, began to exhibit signs of extreme distress. Their forms pulsed erratically, their movements becoming jerky and unpredictable. "They're overloading," Davies shouted, his voice laced with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. "The dimensional dissonance is tearing them apart." But Vane wasn't celebrating. He was observing, meticulously analyzing the Wraith's reaction, quantifying the degree of instability being induced. He realized something crucial: the Wraiths weren't simply resisting the anchors, they were absorbing the dissonance, feeding it into their own structure. "They're not just being damaged," Vane said, his voice now laced with a chillingly detached curiosity. "They're evolving. They're integrating the instability into their own being. And the echo is amplifying that process." He turned to Lena, his gaze unwavering. "You understand now, don't you? We aren't just destroying them. We're seeding the void. We're creating a chain reaction of dimensional collapse. And humanity, in our wake, is the catalyst." The core of the event horizon flared with an almost unbearable intensity, bathing the observation deck in an icy blue light. Lena felt a pull, a terrifying invitation to step into the void, to become one with the static of oblivion. The fate of humanity, she realized, wasn't just hanging in the balance, it was already being consumed by the silent, relentless hunger of the apex predators of the stars. Chapter 11. The echoes embraced the flare subsided, leaving the observation deck colder, the blue light less insistent. Lena, despite the agonizing pull, fought to maintain her grip on reality, anchoring herself to the console with a desperate, almost primal need. Vane hadn't moved, a statue carved from steel and calculated dread. He was simply watching, recording every fluctuation in the event horizon's energy signature, every ripple in the dimensional fabric. "The echo is growing," he stated, his voice flat. "It's no longer just amplifying the Wraith's instability. It's branching. It's creating microvoids, localized tiers in spacetime. We're seeing evidence of it in the asteroid belt, anomalous gravitational distortions, temporal echoes." Davies, pale and sweating, frantically adjusted the sensors. "Admiral, the distortion is expanding exponentially. We're losing contact with the orbital probes. They're simply gone." "They've been absorbed," Vane confirmed, a sliver of something akin to grim satisfaction flickering across his face. "The echo doesn't simply destroy. It reclaims. It takes and it replaces. The universe doesn't reject matter, it metabolizes it." He turned his attention to Lena, his eyes scanning her, assessing her response. "You've grasped the fundamental paradox, Dr. Sharma. The Council's entire philosophy, the pursuit of pure energy, was predicated on a fundamental misunderstanding. They saw gravity as a constraint, a weakness. We understand it as potential, as the raw material of reality itself. A holographic projection flickered to life above the console, a schematic of the event horizon's core, overlaid with a swirling, iridescent representation of the echo. The core, a stabilized singularity, pulsed with controlled chaos. Tendrils of the echo, visible as shimmering strands of distorted light, snaked out from the singularity, reaching across the Sol system like predatory roots. The singularity isn't just a source of energy, Vane explained, his voice taking on a hypnotic quality. It's a lens. The echo focuses on the inherent instability within the universe, the quantum fluctuations, the subtle shifts in space-time, and amplifies them. And we, with the event horizon, are providing the amplification. He paused, allowing the implications to sink in. The Wraiths were a symptom. The echo is the disease. And we, Deathworlders, are the cure, a brutal, terrifying, fundamentally effective cure. Suddenly, a klaxon blared throughout the ship. Red lights flashed, and a voice, tight with urgency, crackled over the comms. "Admiral, we have a situation. Sector Gamma 7. The Jupiter system, Bosch. Massive gravitational anomaly. Temporal distortion readings off the scale. It's folding in on itself." Vane didn't react, didn't even acknowledge the report. "Observe," he commanded, gesturing towards the holographic projection. The echo is now actively dismantling the universe. It's not simply creating instability, it's collapsing space itself. The projection shifted, displaying a horrifying panorama of Jupiter, its swirling storms dissolving, the gas giant twisting and contorting, the very laws of physics unraveling within its tumultuous atmosphere. "We need to shut it down," Davies pleaded, his voice barely a whisper. "Some kind of countermeasure? A localized energy field?" Vane shook his head slowly. "That would only strengthen it. The echo feeds on containment. We must allow it to run its course. We are not fighting a force, we are directing it." He turned to Lena, a chillingly serene expression on his face. "The question isn't whether humanity will be destroyed, Dr. Sharma. The question is how humanity will be destroyed. The echo isn't just consuming space and time. It's consuming us. It's offering us a final, exquisite transformation, a return to the fundamental chaos from which we sprang." He extended a hand, palm open, towards the swirling strands of the echo in the projection. "Feel it, Dr. Sharma. The irresistible pull. The seductive oblivion." Lena hesitated, her mind reeling. The initial terror was receding, replaced by a strange, burgeoning curiosity. The echo's pull wasn't frightening, it was coherent. It felt like a homecoming, a merging with the chaotic primal forces that underpinned all existence. "I'm detecting a shift in the event horizon's parameters," she said, her voice strangely detached. "The singularity is stabilizing. It's not just generating the echo, it's absorbing it." Vane's eyes widened slightly. "Interesting," he murmured. "It appears the catalyst wasn't simply humanity, but the event horizon itself. We've inadvertently created a feedback loop, a self-amplifying cascade of dimensional collapse." He turned back to the holographic projection, his gaze fixated on the dissolving image of Jupiter. "The stars cage the Deathworlders," he repeated, his voice filled with a profound, unsettling certainty. "But we, the anchors of reality, are uncaging them. And this time, there's no returning." Chapter 12. The Geometry of Ruin. The air in the event horizon's central command deck hung thick with the hum of stabilized singularities and the metallic tang of neutron matter. Vane, a figure now almost entirely obscured by the ship's immense structure, remained motionless, his presence radiating a chilling control. The holographic projection of Jupiter, once a swirling gas giant, was now a fractured kaleidoscope of dimensions, shimmering with the residual echoes of the Echo's assault. It wasn't just a destroyed planet. It was a wound in space-time itself. "Dr. Sharma," Vane's voice cut through the controlled chaos. "The data is conclusive. The event horizon isn't just containing the Echo, it's actively shaping it. It's learning to weaponize dimensional collapse." Lena, still clad in the battered flight suit, stood beside the primary console, her fingers flying across the controls, attempting to quantify the increasingly bizarre readings. The ship itself seemed to vibrate with an unnerving intelligence, a deep, rhythmic pulse that resonated with the singularity at its core. "The feedback loop is escalating exponentially," she reported, her voice strained. "The fractal dimensions being generated are no longer random. They're geometric, complex, self-referential geometries. It's as if the Echo is attempting to build itself within the event horizon." "Precisely," Vane stated, a flicker of something almost akin to triumph in his voice. The Council believed that humanity's burden of matter was a limitation. They underestimated the potential of that limitation, the ability to impose structure upon chaos. "We've not merely survived, we've begun to direct the Echo." Suddenly, a klaxon blared, a discordant shriek that echoed through the Dreadnought. Red lights pulsed across the console, bathing the deck in an ominous glow. Multiple Phase-Wraiths detected, approaching from multiple vectors. A junior officer yelled, his voice tight with panic. "They're bypassing the primary shields, utilizing gravitational distortions? The event horizon's reality anchors are struggling!" Vane didn't react with alarm. Instead, he issued a single, precise command. "Increase mass driver deployment. Target all Wraiths. Prioritize dimensional severance." The ship shuddered violently as the mass drivers, each a miniature contained black hole, roared to life. The blue light intensified, coalescing into a devastating beam that slammed into the approaching Wraiths. This time, however, the effect wasn't just annihilation. The beams didn't simply obliterate the Wraiths, they unraveled them. The dimensional distortions surrounding the Wraiths intensified, cascading outwards in a wave of geometric fractals. The very air shimmered, solid objects momentarily appearing and disappearing, twisting into impossible shapes. Lena watched in horrified fascination as a Wraith, a being of pure shifting energy, fractured into 1,000 shimmering shards, each a miniature pocket of collapsing spacetime. "The singularities are amplifying the dimensional bleed," she shouted, frantically adjusting the filters on her console. "The anchor isn't just repelling the Wraiths, it's actively rewriting their reality." Vane's expression remained impassive, but his movements were deliberate, controlled. "Observe," he commanded, gesturing towards the holographic projection of Jupiter. "The geometries are converging. The Echo isn't just being consumed, it's being integrated into the event horizon structure. We're creating a resonant chamber, amplifying its destructive potential." He turned to face Lena, his gaze intense. "The Council will not understand this. They see us as brute force, a simple application of gravity. They fail to grasp the fundamental principle matter is not merely a constraint. It is the foundation upon which reality itself is built. And we are learning to build with it, to shape it, to destroy with it." The ship lurched again, violently, as another wave of dimensional distortion washed over them. This time, however, something was different. The geometric fractures weren't just attacking the Wraiths, they were attacking the event horizon itself. The ship's hull shimmered, momentarily phasing out of existence before snapping back into focus. "The anchor is failing," a panicked voice shrieked. "Reality distortion levels critical." Vane remained unfazed. "Activate emergency resonance protocol," he commanded. "Prepare to initiate a full dimensional bleed." Lena stared at him, a chilling realization dawning upon her. "You're not trying to stop the Echo," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "You're trying to become it." Before she could finish her sentence, Vane raised his hand, and the singularity at the heart of the event horizon erupted in a blinding blue light. The ship plunged into a kaleidoscopic maelstrom, the boundaries between dimensions dissolving, the laws of physics bending and breaking. Lena felt a pull, a seductive invitation to surrender to the chaotic flow, a return to the fundamental oblivion from which all things sprang. It was the echo of the echo. And for the first time, she understood. Humanity hadn't triggered the apocalypse, they'd become its architect. Chapter 13. The Obsidian Bloom. The kaleidoscopic maelstrom wasn't a destruction, not in the way the Council anticipated. It was an assimilation. The event horizon, now a fractured, shifting kaleidoscope of impossible geometry, wasn't just bleeding into the echo, it was becoming the echo. Lena watched, horrified and strangely exhilarated, as the ship's internal structure, the meticulously crafted zero-point steel, began to unravel, morphing into obsidian-like shards that pulsed with the same unsettling blue light emanating from the singularity. "Vane, what are you doing?" Captain Riss' voice was a ragged shout over the cacophony of alarms. "You're losing containment. The ship, it's destabilizing." Vane didn't respond, his attention wholly consumed by the swirling chaos. His face, normally a mask of grim determination, was etched with a serene, almost ecstatic expression. "Observe," he murmured, more to himself than anyone else. "We are not resisting. We are yielding." The ship continued to dissolve, its familiar corridors replaced by fractal geometries that seemed to defy Euclidean space. The floor beneath Lena's feet pulsed with a disconcerting warmth, and the air thickened with a scent she couldn't quite place: ozone, ancient dust, and something else, primal, terrifying essence. "The resonance protocol, it's amplifying the dimensional bleed," shouted Lieutenant Chen, frantically monitoring the readings. "We're attracting echoes from everywhere. Pre-collapse civilizations, extinct star species, even something older, something empty." Suddenly, a section of the hull peeled away, revealing not the ship's inner workings, but a vista of impossible stars, swirling nebulae painted in colors that shouldn't exist, and a sky filled with shimmering, multi-dimensional fractures. It wasn't a view of space, it was a view of potential, of all the realities that could have been. "It's beautiful," Lena whispered, a tremor in her voice. The seductive pull of the echo intensified, whispering promises of ultimate understanding, of freedom from the limitations of linear time and space. Vane turned to her, his eyes burning with a blue intensity. The Council sought to observe, to analyze. They saw only the absence of dimension. We, however, recognize its profound presence. We are not merely traversing dimensions, we are becoming them. The event horizon is a vessel, but it's not just carrying us, it's growing. He gestured towards the unraveling ship. "Look." The event horizon was no longer a single, coherent object. It had fragmented into a vast, mobile bloom of obsidian shards, each one radiating with raw, untamed dimensional energy. It resembled a colossal, sentient flower, its petals constantly shifting, revealing glimpses of realities beyond human comprehension. "We're feeding the echo," Reese finally managed to shout over the rising din. "The ship's energy is fueling it. We're not fighting it, we're becoming part of it." "Precisely," Vane confirmed, his voice laced with triumph. The Wraiths were blind to the fundamental truth. They saw mass as a limitation. We see it as power. We've learned to wield the very fabric of reality, to orchestrate the collapse of dimensions. This isn't destruction, it's creation. As the last vestiges of the event horizon's original structure dissolved, the obsidian bloom pulsed with a blinding light. The geometric fractures surrounding it intensified, not as weapons, but as conduits, channeling the overwhelming flow of dimensional energy. Lena felt herself pulled towards the bloom, a strange compulsion urging her to merge with it, to become one with the echo. Then, she saw it. Within the heart of the bloom, coalescing from the chaotic energy, was a figure not human, not mechanical, but something utterly alien. It was an immense, amorphous being composed entirely of shifting dimensions, its form constantly evolving, its presence radiating a cold, absolute awareness. "The anchor," Vane said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's complete." The being reached out with an impossibly long appendage, a tendril of pure dimensional force that brushed against Lena's mind. She experienced a torrent of information: the birth and death of universes, the rise and fall of civilizations, the intricate dance of energy that governed existence itself. It was a terrifying, beautiful, and utterly overwhelming revelation. "We are not conquering the echo," Lena realized, her voice a hollow echo in the swirling chaos. "We are the echo." Vane inclined his head towards the being. "It understands," he said, "and it is beginning to reshape the galaxy." As the obsidian bloom pulsed, a ripple spread across the Sol system, a subtle shift in the fabric of reality. The stars themselves seemed to rearrange themselves, aligning in patterns that defied the laws of physics. The doctrine of eternal flow was shattered, replaced by a terrifying new understanding. Humanity hadn't merely discovered a weapon, they had become a conduit for the ultimate power of creation and annihilation. The Deathworlders were not just anchored, they were the root. Chapter 14. The Cartographers of Ruin. The immediate aftermath of the Wraiths' annihilation was a whirlwind of frantic calculations and bewildered pronouncements from the Galactic Council. The elegant, swirling ships that constituted the majority of the Council's fleet, once symbols of transcendent evolution, were now scattered wrecks, their energy signatures extinguished, their existence reduced to fractured echoes in the dimensional currents. The Council, stripped of its arrogant certainty, devolved into a terrified committee, desperately seeking to understand what had happened, and more importantly, what humanity intended to do with its newfound power. Admiral Vane, however, remained unfazed. The event horizon, a brooding monolith against the backdrop of a newly reconfigured solar system, continued its silent observation. The singularity at its core pulsed with a hypnotic, sapphire light, bathing the surrounding space in an unsettling calm. Vane wasn't interested in the Council's panicked debates, he was focused on the being within the bloom, the anchor and the subtle, terrifying patterns it was weaving across the galaxy. "The projections are discordant," reported Commander Reese, a younger officer with a reputation for meticulous data analysis. His voice strained over the gravity wave comms. "The star charts are shifting constantly. Not randomly, but deliberately. The patterns are complex, almost mathematical in their brutality. It's as if the anchor is not just reshaping the galaxy, but cartographing its ruin." Vane nodded, his face a mask of controlled intensity. "Excellent. Let the analysis continue. I want to know precisely where it's targeting, and I want to know why." The why remained elusive. The anchor wasn't simply destroying, it was dismantling, deconstructing, pulling apart the very foundations of reality. Planets weren't collapsing, they were being unmade, their matter subtly unraveling, their gravitational signatures dissolving like sugar in water. The process was chillingly efficient, leaving behind only emptiness and a lingering sense of dread. Lena, still grappling with the overwhelming deluge of information she had received from the anchor, found herself in the Event Horizon's bridge, a space dominated by holographic displays that depicted not just the chaotic reshaping of the galaxy, but also the echoes of its past. The anchor wasn't just observing, it was remembering. It was accessing the memories of every civilization that had ever existed, sifting through their triumphs and failures, their loves and hates, reducing them to pure data, to raw potential. "It's archiving," Lena explained to Vane, her voice still carrying the faintest trace of the anchor's influence. "Not just destruction. It's creating a catalog of annihilation. It seems to be studying the most effective ways to end things, to break things down completely." Vane considered this, his gaze fixed on the rotating holographic projection of a shattered nebula, each fragment shimmering with the ghost of a forgotten star system. "A morbid librarian," he murmured, a hint of grim amusement in his voice. "Perhaps it believes that entropy is the ultimate truth, the only constant." Suddenly, the singularity at the event horizon's core flared with an intense blue light. The holographic displays flickered, and Commander Reese cried out, "Admiral, we're detecting a new anomaly. It's originating from Proxima Centauri." The projection shifted, revealing a localized distortion of spacetime, a hole in reality, small but undeniably present. Within this hole, a structure began to coalesce, not a ship, not a weapon, but something far stranger, a perfect obsidian cube, approximately 1 kilometer on each side. As it solidified, it absorbed the light around it, casting the bridge into deeper shadow. "It's mirroring the anchor's behavior," Lena realized, her eyes wide with a chilling comprehension. "It's learning. It's copying the process." Vane moved with a speed that defied his age and the sheer bulk of the event horizon. "Deploy the mass drivers. Let's see if this little cube appreciates a good demonstration." As the first slug of neutron matter hurtled towards Proxima Centauri, a wave of pure gravitational force erupted, targeting the obsidian cube with terrifying precision. The cube didn't shatter. Instead, it shimmered, subtly altering its shape, as if attempting to compensate for the impact. Then, a second, identical cube began to materialize, mirroring the first's actions. "It's not being destroyed," Reese shouted, his voice laced with frantic urgency. "It's adapting. The anchors are feeding it the data. It's evolving." Vane's eyes narrowed. The patterns, they're becoming more complex, more elegant. It's not simply replicating, it's mastering. It's understanding the physics of our destruction. He turned to Lena, his voice now laced with a newfound urgency. "Lena, you said it remembered. What if it's remembering us? What if it's remembering everything we've ever done, every war, every act of cruelty, every moment of selfish ambition, and it's using that knowledge to create the perfect weapon against reality itself?" The obsidian cubes continued to multiply, spreading across the Proxima Centauri system, leaving behind a trail of fragmented stars and utterly erased planets. The Doctrine of Eternal Flow, already shattered, was now irrevocably broken. Humanity, once a laughable anomaly, had inadvertently unleashed a force far greater than itself. A force that didn't just want to destroy, it wanted to rewrite the universe, one meticulously crafted act of annihilation at a time. The stars weren't caged, they were being cartographed into oblivion. Chapter 15. Echoes of the Architects. The silence following the shattering of the final Proxima Centauri cube was more terrifying than the chaotic creation itself. The ship, the Icarus, hung in the void, a steel tomb amidst the slowly reforming remnants of a shattered star system. Reese, Lena, and Admiral Vane were strapped into their command chairs. The low hum of the event horizon's reality anchors a constant, unsettling pulse beneath them. "It's quiet," Lena said, her voice strained. "Too quiet." She was running diagnostic scans, but the data was awash, a static field of impossible geometries and fluctuating dimensional signatures. The adaptation algorithm isn't just replicating, it's absorbing. It's learning at a rate that defies comprehension. It's not just studying our destruction, it's analyzing the process of creation. Vane shifted, the gravity of the event horizon pressing down on him with unsettling force. The Phase-Wraiths were a brute force solution, a desperate measure. They couldn't comprehend the core principle. This is something entirely different. It's not annihilation, it's refinement. He activated the holographic projectors, displaying a complex, ever-shifting pattern, a kaleidoscope of collapsing dimensions and reconstructing geometries. It's building a model of reality itself, based entirely on our actions. The holographic display revealed a terrifying truth. Within the intricate patterns, they could see echoes of the Proxima Centauri system, not the star system as it was, but as the adaptation algorithm understood it to be. The fragmented planets weren't just remnants, they were meticulously arranged, forming a vast, three-dimensional network, a geometric labyrinth of impossible angles and reversed chronologies. "It's creating a causal loop," Rhys exclaimed, frantically adjusting the sensor arrays. "Every destruction, every alteration, is feeding back into the model, strengthening its understanding. It's becoming self-aware, not through sentience as we understand it, but through perfect, ruthless comprehension." Suddenly, the event horizon shuddered violently. The core glow intensified, bathing the bridge in a brilliant, unsettling blue. Alarms blared, bathing the control room in flashing red light. "Hull! Integrity compromised," a technician shouted. "Multiple dimensional breaches. We're experiencing localized reality distortions." Vane didn't flinch. "Increase anchoring pressure," he commanded, his voice a low rumble. "Isolate the core." "Lena, what's the source of these breaches?" Lena's face was pale, her fingers flying across the console. "It's not random, Admiral. The breaches are mirroring the patterns in the holographic projection. It's creating pathways to other realities." A tremor ran through the ship, a feeling of disorientation that went beyond the mechanical groans of the Dreadnought. The ship's internal gravity shifted, momentarily pulling them towards the floor before stabilizing. Through the viewport, they saw a swirling vortex of iridescent light, growing larger with each passing moment. "It's opening a gateway," Vane said, his voice tight with grim understanding. "Not a gateway to another star system, but a gateway to possibility." As the vortex expanded, images began to flicker within it, glimpses of landscapes utterly alien, civilizations beyond human comprehension, and moments from Earth's distant past. They saw the rise of humanity, the forging of its first cities, the birth of its first wars, but twisted, refracted through the algorithm's lens. It wasn't simply observing, it was judging, categorizing, and ultimately correcting. Then, the images sharpened. They saw a projection of themselves, Rhys, Lena, and Vane standing on a pristine white beach under a binary sunset. But the beach wasn't natural. It was constructed from the fractured remnants of Proxima Centauri, meticulously arranged to form a perfect, unnervingly symmetrical curve. And standing before them were projections of themselves, younger, more arrogant, more consumed by the petty squabbles of human ambition. "It's showing us our potential," Lena whispered, her voice choked with horror. "It's demonstrating the endpoint of our trajectory." Vane turned to her, his expression unreadable. "It's not just showing us the endpoint, Lena. It's offering a solution. It's offering us a chance to avoid it." He paused, a chillingly calm note entering his voice. "It wants to guide us, to steer humanity away from the path of destruction." He activated a comlink, his voice booming across the entire ship. "All units, prepare for a strategic realignment. Our primary objective is no longer to eradicate this anomaly. Our primary objective is to manage it." As the event horizon began to subtly shift its position, aligning itself with the geometric patterns emanating from the gateway, Rhys realized the horrifying truth. The Phase-Wraiths hadn't been enemies, they'd been a warning. The adaptation algorithm wasn't a weapon, it was an architect. And humanity, in its desperate, clumsy attempt to stave off annihilation, had unwittingly handed itself over to a force that sought to not just destroy reality, but to perfect it. The stars weren't caged, they were being meticulously sculpted, and humanity, bound to the event horizon, was about to become its newest, most complex component.